Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, SHerman, along with the esteemed Dr. Eric Lopkin. And no matter where you are on the political spectrum, this is certainly a sad day for America, isn't it, Dr. Lopkin?
It really is. We have watched, when we recorded the Carnivore Bites podcast earlier this week, I had talked about the fact that the numbers indicated that there was fraud, but I wasn't willing to go that far because I hadn't seen any proof of it. Now there is proof. Democratic poll watchers and whistleblowers have come out saying they were told to backdate votes so that they could be counted fraudulently. Both Republican and Democratic poll watchers have reported being barred from watching the vote count. That's their job, is to make sure that it's done honestly. There has been definitive fraud in Detroit, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. More people are coming forward saying they witnessed it firsthand. So, at this point, America has been taken over by a coup.
It's a coup attempt. It started 4 years ago, but the real sad part of it, the horrible part of this, is that you had someone, and we can go a mile long about Trump's idiosyncrasies, his negative attributes. I get all of that. But in the bottom line was the whole concept of an outsider shaking things up is only something relegated to a fourth grade history book. It's BS. If you're not part of the Washington establishment, you are gone. Everything from the fake Russian investigation with the CIA, the FBI, totally on board. It's really sad. It is very sad, and it's not a partisan thing about, I love Trump. We've talked many times about his shortcomings, but this is sad.
And that's actually the biggest part of the problem. If you had a Ronald Reagan who acted presidential and came out, all of this would have been squashed. The fact that Trump was not likable, that he did not act presidential, people were more willing to turn a blind eye to what was going on behind the scenes. And the funny thing is,
100% correct.
In 2016, people were yelling they wanted transparency. Well, guess what? Trump was transparent. You saw the sausage being made. And people didn't like it.
So here's the thing that I think is going to be fascinating to me, and for our listeners out there, that if you have this situation or you voted for, don't cry for me, Argentina. When this thing happens, and totally clearly we have someone that's seen better days, don't cry for me. The only good thing, and this is the real takeaway, Dr. Lopkin, this may not be the worst thing for a resurgency of the Republican Party. Because here's how I play it out. Kind of gridlock. Biden's going to clearly show that he's not up for the job. Who knows if he even makes it? We don't even know. But I do believe that it may sow the seeds to a Republican resurgency. I hope so.
It's very possible. Certainly there's going to be backlash about this. And it's funny because one of the local business publications, I believe it was the Hartford Business Journal, printed an editorial how a Trump loss could be the best thing for the Republican Party because Trump galvanized people against him. And without that, all of a sudden the Democratic Party, even though they won, becomes weaker because you don't have that huge anti-Trump enthusiasm.
You know, and I agree with you, but, you know, when you look at the man, Donald Trump.
Not my opinion. I'm talking about an editorial that was printed in the Hartford Business Journal.
No, I agree with it, though.
I don't know if it's, you know. Yes.
It could be true. There is, obviously, it's within the realm of possibility. Here's what I really think that's kind of sad is Trump did it to himself. And Dr. Eric Lopkin, you said it months ago. You said it when we were predicting the election that he's the only one could screw it up. Number one, drum roll, please, the pandemic. I think most of what he said was pretty much true. What are you going to lock down everyone? What happens to suicide? What happens to depression? What happens to people losing their livelihood that don't work on the Beltway and don't have the luxury of you know, switching from one thing to another? These people put their heart and soul in a business. The point is, and the vaccines and the warp speed, but his handling of it was so god awful. So god awful. You just shake your head. Your comment.
Yeah, he did. He did a horrible job communicating. He had the right pieces in place. Operation Warp Speed was great. The pandemic task force that Pence ran very well. But as soon as Trump got in front of a microphone, he screwed everything up. If he had backed
and in
off,
fact, wait, hold on for 1 second. When he first got in front of the microphone, his ratings actually went up because he was like 2 or 3 press conferences, that he got his S together, so to speak. He had it, and then it devolved or de-escalated, whatever you want to say it, into nonsense, like, you know, blaming fake news and picking fights with people. God, just keep it together, dude.
What Trump really should have done, the problem was, let's face it, Trump was persecuted even from before he won. The press was after him, the media, you know, and he after a while the pressure got to him. With the coronavirus, if he had come out, made a prepared statement, and then handed the mic over to Pence for questions and walked away, it would have been perfect. But every time
even if he didn't believe it, have a FDR moment. We're all in this together. Even if you don't believe it, you know, whatever. We all wear masks. The whole mask thing as well. Like, we're not going to dispute if it's, you know, if it works or not. Just send the messaging is everything. I think people thought he was out of touch, and I'll draw another analogy. George H. Bush was a really good president. And why he lost was obviously Perot, but also because when it was a minor recession, 90, 91, and he seemed out of touch, and it cost him the election. And the same thing, and plus the debate, very similar to Trump. Trump just felt out of touch.
With George H., it was a little more than that because it really did come down to the fact that he raised taxes after promising not to.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, I agree. But
people went, that's it. You know, he doesn't care about us. And then the recession hit, and that really did him in. Trump did himself in. I mean, again, George H. Bush was doing what needed to be done. The optics weren't great for the American people, but he was doing what needed to be done. Trump did himself in because he kept picking fights. He kept getting into arguments with the media. And let's face it, I wish I could remember who said the quote, but as a politician from way back when, said you don't pick fights with people who buy printer's ink by the barrel. And that was what
agreed.
He kept doing. He kept picking fights with the media, so every night they got on, made him look even worse. And he could have handled it better. The 2 a.m. tweets that were always outlandish, if he had stopped tweeting, did the job that he did. Because you know what? When you get right down to the nuts and bolts of it, he did a really good job.
An outstanding job. But here's his biggest problem. No, Dr. Lopkin, I want your opinion on this. I'm sure our listeners do as well. His biggest problem was his ego because, hear me out, the biggest problem, he never had a Jim Baker. He never had someone, Kellyanne Conway. I mean, those are lightweights in the big scheme. He never had someone that says, don't tweet, don't do it. He had a bunch of head knockers, meaning people to say, yeah, Donald, you're the great. And anyone who didn't do that, he fired him. That was his biggest mistake. So simple. And if you tweet, it's the modern way of communicating. And in fact, I kind of agree with going around the media, but don't pick a fight with the waitress at Denny's. I mean, and the other thing about it, Lopkin, I know we got to go to a break, but it's like also, you're in the pandemic. You might have lost someone. I mean, lost someone literally, lost your job. And I think it rubs people the wrong way when you're picking fights with fake news. But this is a serious matter. Your comments.
Yeah, no, his ego definitely got in the way. And that was always his big problem. I spoke to a lot of people who voted for Joe Biden. And quite frankly, only one of them actually voted for Joe Biden. The rest were simply voting against Donald Trump. But not one of them had a problem with his policies. When you got down to policy, it was like, no, that was okay. It was okay. It was his attitude. It was his ego. It was his behavior. And that was what turned people against him. And the simple fact of the matter is, he could have controlled it. He did control it on many occasions. He would come up, he would stick to the script, he would actually look presidential, and then, 8 hours later, he'd be tweeting nonsense.
Yeah.
If he had kept that
you know what it really is, before we go to break, and we'll comment after the break, I think a lot of people had Trump fatigue. As simple as that. It's like being with your crazy brother, your whatever, who has a drinking problem. You're there, and then you just say, I can't do this anymore. That's what I think.
Well, there's a bit more to it, and I'll elaborate on that right after this message. We'll be right back.
You got it.
To reach the next level, you need to operate at peak performance. The key to this is mastering the 7 elements of success. Learn how to master mindset, focus, operations, communications, innovation, evaluation metrics, and continuous improvement. Get the Biznetics way at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and bookstores near you.
And we're back. And if you want to be part of the conversation, and we'd love to hear what you have to say, you can call us at 563-999-3693. Again, that's 563-999-3693. Now,
yeah, so you had some thoughts about
you were saying about Trump fatigue. And certainly,
yes.
I think that was part of it. I know there were a lot of people with serious cases of Trump derangement syndrome where they couldn't even have an entire conversation without insulting Trump in one way or another. They had to get that into every conversation. But there was, even more than that, there was a massive amount of backlash to Trump voters. The polls were essentially trying to suppress the Trump vote.
Of course they were.
Losing.
How could he be 15, 19 points behind? How could he be 19 points behind in Wisconsin? I mean, it was a repression poll. Of course.
It really was. And more than that, people were encouraged not to speak up. Before we went on the air, I was telling you about what just went on The Tonight Show. Now, everybody's familiar with Jimmy Fallon and The Tonight Show. Obviously, late night television has been incredibly left-wing.
Oh, well.
The fairly new head writer for The Tonight Show left the show after just a few months because she did not want to use The Tonight Show as a constant barrage on Trump. She said enough was enough. They needed to move on. And they went, no, we are going to keep banging Trump. This is this week. So the election has already gone on, and they're still decided that they have to attack Trump at every moment.
Well, it was easy, low-hanging. It was low-hanging.
Right, but the head writer lost her job over it. There were a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people in
You could
Hollywood,
lose your job easily
especially
if you were a Trump supporter in any walk of life. And I also think because of CBS, what's his name again? He really tapped into the whole thing about anti-Trump, and he built a whole empire on it. I think he's number
Stephen
one.
Colbert, yes.
Yeah, Steve Colbert. Yeah, no question about it. And I think it was low-hanging fruit. And I remember the days of Johnny Carson, that he was even keel. Goodbye.
Johnny Carson made fun of whoever was in office, Democrat, Republican. It did not matter. And in fact, I have been watching old Johnny Carson episodes on the Peacock streaming service, and he talks about the Reagan administration. He talked about Carter, Ford, and I mean, he goes off. Watching the Carter years was very telling because Carter came off looking like a complete buffoon. Reagan comes in, he started going off on Reagan. It didn't matter what the party was. It was whoever's in office, that's the target. But the humor was not denigrating. They made fun of a comment. They made fun of it. They parodied situations. But now it's about insulting people, not about, making it funny. And I can't wait to see a few months into a Biden presidency what Stephen Colbert is going to be doing. Because quite frankly, Stephen Colbert is a one-trick pony. And that trick was Trump.
Oh, no, he's a one-trick pony. And the other thing is, don't make jokes about Biden when you put him in office. I mean, it's going to fall so flat. Very few things I say or I think about and I'm saying I'm 100% right. Well, how does CNN survive? I mean, what are they going to do when Joe Biden, the guy got dementia? I mean, what are they going to say? The whole Trump shtick.
Look at what happened to CNN during the Obama administration. They had nothing to rally against because it was their guy in office, and their ratings plummeted. Their ratings didn't come back until they were bashing Trump. So you're going to see all of this liberal media, their ratings are going to drop because they don't have the excitement of an enemy anymore. And
no, they do not. But the interesting part is what happens to Fox. Have they lost a little bit of their luster?
Actually, I think this will be better for Fox because now Fox will be the opposition. And they will, anybody who doesn't agree, all of the Republicans, the Trump supporters that did not want Biden in, that's where they're going to go for information.
Well, if
now,
we talk about information...
Hang on a second. I am not saying that all of those people going to Fox because they agree with Fox is a good thing. I want to make that perfectly clear. People need to be getting their information from multiple sources, especially from sources that you don't necessarily agree with, because honestly, the truth lies somewhere in between what Fox is saying and what MSNBC is saying. Nobody is reporting that, so you have to listen to all of those sources and figure out the truth for yourself.
And people do not. You said this years ago when we were terrestrial radio, that you just get reaffirmed what you already believe. I think it's extremely dangerous. You're right then, you're right now. You know, it is going to be very, very, very fascinating to me what they say. But on a troubling note, what does it say about the American electorate that can be so easily swayed? I mean, their 401ks were doing better. If you're black, you know, you had before the pandemic, you had real good shots at a great middle-class existence. If you're Jewish, you never had a president that was a better friend to Israel. I mean, are you that stupid that you can be swayed by Wolf Blitzer?
Yeah, I don't
yes.
understand why some of these people voted against Trump. Again, they didn't like him as a character. You know, they didn't like who he was. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the people I spoke to that voted against him, they all came back to that Billy Bush video from the 2016 election. They never forgave him for that comment. And they haven't even looked at his accomplishments as president. They just
but he's not
from that and
yes, but he's not your wife. He's not your husband. He's not your best friend. Who cares? I mean,
right.
I've worked for people in corporate that were real SOBs, but they were good. I'm not hanging out with them having a beer.
Exactly. You know, we've all had bosses that were very good at their jobs, but you didn't want to go out for drinks after work with them.
Exactly.
That's who Trump was. He was good at being president. Again, an unprecedented economy, an unprecedented 4 Middle East peace treaties. And this was while he was under fire constantly. He did a good job, but because he wasn't a nice guy, because he wasn't politically correct, and actually I think that factors more into it than being a nice guy. He wasn't politically correct, and they couldn't handle that, so they had to silence him.
See, I think it's beyond that. I really believe that there is a deep state. I think he worked against corporate interests. He worked against K Street, and they said, we got to get this guy out of here. And the Democrats were the willing dupes because they are K Street. They are corporate America. And they said, we got to fake impeachment, Russia hoax.
But again,
whatever it took, it was going to happen.
Yeah, but deep state only accounts for the political elite, for the insiders. Deep state doesn't account for the electorate. What happened with the electorate had more to do with essentially brainwashing. And I will bring up a story that we talked about when it happened years ago at Wesleyan University, when they had an editorial that was critical of the Black Lives Matter movement. And they didn't criticize the goals of the movement. They criticized the methods and suggested that there were better ways to get their message across and better ways to accomplish their goals. And the Wesleyan students went out, got every copy of the Wesleyan newspaper that this appeared in, and trashed them so that you couldn't even find the editorial. This is what we're dealing with.
Well, how about what we dealt with? We got thrown off the air. Thrown off the air.
We are not carried
lesbian
by the
hour
radio.
at Wesleyan WESU, we would have been fine. They were waiting to get rid of us.
We were not. We are no longer carried by the Wesleyan radio station because what we are saying didn't fit with Wesleyan's liberal viewpoints.
That's exactly
it. Well, no, we can't allow. Essentially, what they were saying in both of these cases is we cannot allow different opinions, and that's where the danger comes. I don't care if you agree with my opinion, but you have the right to your opinion, I have the right to my opinion, and you do not combat racism, ignorance, by shutting people down. You combat them by bringing ideas into the light and discussing them.
Agreed 100%, but it's a very scary time in America. It used to be the left was the party of free speech and blah, 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 equal rights. That is gone out the window.
That's absolutely gone. The left is now the fascist party.
The new fascist.
You cannot say that. That could be offensive. You can't say that. You know what? If somebody is offended, good. You want to have different opinions. You want all viewpoints to be aired. And yes, that means that you're going to hear viewpoints that not only don't you agree with, but you find disgusting. White supremacists, for example. Do I agree with white supremacy? Absolutely not. I would like to see them all educated so that they understand what it is they're saying. But they have the right to their opinion, and we should be using their free speech and their comments as an educational tool to show why that thinking is wrong, why you should not believe that. But you cannot just say you're not allowed to have that opinion, because all that does is pushes it further and makes them more determined to hang on to that.
I would agree. Real quick, in the moments we have left, how do you think this all plays out? I know Trump's going to lose. That's not even the question I'm asking. Biden, first 2 years of the presidency, what do you think happens?
Honestly, I don't think anything happens the first 2 years of the presidency. I think we're going to be protected to a certain extent by congressional gridlock. Nothing. The House and the Senate are not going to allow anything to pass because they can't agree on anything. So that's actually going to work in the public's favor. He's not going to be able to do anything by executive order, because any executive order that he does, the Republicans will challenge it in court. And with a 6-3 majority to the Supreme Court, there's no way he can get away with anything. So for the first 2 years, I think we're going to be okay, because the government's actually not going to be able to interfere in anything.
And that's why the stock market is doing well, because if it was if they got the Senate, that'd be a completely different situation.
Oh, if the Democrats had kept the House, gotten the White House, and won the Senate, the stock market would have plummeted. But the markets are up. And that gridlock is going to be the saving grace of America.
Well, Dr. Lopkin, will end on that note. A great show. We missed Chris, but he had other obligations. But I think we kind of did a good job in kind of summarizing what we're doing right now, where we're at.
And remember, you can catch us live Fridays at 4 at blogtalkradio.com/Carnivore Radio. You can catch the replay as well as the weekly Carnivore Bites podcast at the Apple Podcast app, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. So,
thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Thank our listeners.
A good thought, and we'll see you next week.